Well, it takes a long time. You're a substitute for a very long time. For me, it was about 6 years, and I worked on 4 different railroads across Iowa: the CB&Q, the Rock Island, the Milwaukee, and the Northwestern. So you really, you really get a feel on geography, so to speak. And then uh, I was assigned on the Santa Fe Railroad to go to Kansas City. So I was all over Iowa and northern Missouri. So after 6 years, I had a regular job, and I knew when I was working my days on and my days off. So that's what you always hope for, to get a regular run, so to speak, and then you can have a so-called normal life of days on, days off.
Well, I was always a sub, so I ran different lines. Because I joined the service in St. Paul, I ran on mostly St. Paul headouts the first several months. The St. Paul and Miles City, that Miles City in Montana, East Division was the Northern Pacific Railroad, which left St. Paul, went northwesterly through Minnesota to Fargo and across the southern part of North Dakota through Jamestown, Bismarck, Dickinson, and into Montana. And that particular line, the West Division, ran from Mandan, which is near Bismarck, from Jamestown through Mandan to Miles City. So it was divided in two divisions. I also ran various Sioux Line trains. There was an Owen and St. Paul that ran into Wisconsin a ways. There was the St. Paul and Portal, which left St. Paul along with another train called the B line, that's borderline at Canada, at Emerson, British Columbia, that the American crew would get off and the Canadians would get on and run the train to, or work the train to Winnipeg. Those trains would go out of St. Paul as one train and split at Glenwood, Minnesota, and the Portal went west and the B line went more northerly. I ran one highway post office, that was into Wisconsin, and I got to run a couple of trips on the on the Milwaukee Road to Chicago, the Chicken Min, Chicago and Minneapolis. Well, a typical work day for me tended to be at night, and we would come to the rail car in whatever terminal in my case, running out of the Twin Cities, it was often a terminal, and we'd get to the car and set it up, hanging all the pouches and sacks as required, putting the labels into the brackets for the appropriate distribution scheme, and the headers into the mail slots, pigeonholes, and then we'd start receiving mail. And often people dressed a little finer for out of the car, and of course it was a bit dusty and dirty work, so you had bib overalls. That was my favorite for working in the car. It saved scuffing on shirts and so forth. And then we'd, at the end of the trip, change back into our street clothes and leave the car. But we'd begin receiving mail. We'd sort the incoming pouches and sacks. Some would be in the storage, those stanchions with the tall poles at the end of the car. Other would be working mail, and it'd go up to where the pouch crew or the papers and parcels crew were working. The pouch crew would begin opening pouches onto the table and throwing bundles of working mail onto the tables where the letter clerks would work. Usually we had to, if the car had been hung by the incoming crew, which sometimes happened, we still had to label up for, because each clerk had his own set of labels, the pouch labels and or letters facing slips for the bundles of letters, etc.
Well, a typical workday can vary from, depending upon where you're going, of course. Our particular train that I worked on from Louisville up to Chicago would leave Louisville late in the evening so as to arrive in Chicago early the next morning. So all the mail that had been collected and kind of funneled into the Louisville area that was going to Indiana, Missouri, Michigan, Illinois, of course, and Ohio. And of course, since we're going through Indiana, anything in Indiana. And so you have you're distributing the mail overnight, and to be sent out to the stations and branches in Chicago or further on toward the destination as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And so we'd go to work anywhere from 8:30, 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night, and arrive in Chicago early morning, around 7-ish. The train from Louisville to Ashland would leave Louisville at about early afternoon, get to Asheville in the evening, and then come back the next morning. And again, you're taking the mail from Eastern Kentucky, Virginia, Ohio, and bringing it to Louisville and distributing on the way.
I worked a register case. My last line I worked on was the Minneapolis and Kansas City, was the Rock Island Railroad running down through southern Minnesota, Iowa, and Missouri. And I had worked registered mail on the trip south, and when you dispatched a pouch of registered mail to an office or to another RPO, I would have to send a little card that would be stamped and sent back to me, and it was my responsibility to keep that for 3 years. Well, my trip coincided with the very last trip of the Kansas City and Fort Worth, and they wrote on the card that they sent back farewell, and I still have that among my souvenirs. That was kind of a pleasant occurrence.
My best memory was the quality of the people that I worked with. I can remember guys that were so dedicated and so conscientious about providing the best service that you possibly could, not arguing the point by any means, but, well, if we send it via this train, this letter will get to this town 15 minutes sooner than if you drop it off at the next station and they put it on a truck, or something like that. The level of conscientiousness was amazing, absolutely amazing, and I treasured that.
But I think my best experience was the people I work with. I worked with, when I first started out, I just was a kid, and I worked with guys that all of them were World War II veterans, and they had that esprit de corps and camaraderie that I never saw since. So that's my favorite thing, I guess, was just the people that I was blessed to work with.